I'm very interested in this topic of measurement and actually assessing students' abilities to learn. So let's get into that a little bit. So you're kind of passionate about online education versus a traditional classroom model.
Both are wonderful.
Right.
In my opinion, they typically have two different audiences. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they're equal. They're not. Online education tends to draw more non-traditional learners who are managing and juggling families and jobs, particularly in Colorado Springs. We've got a lot of military who start here at UCCS and get deployed. And instead of having to transfer, they can go online and finish. It is typically a different cohort. Mm-hmm. When COVID hit, my son was still in college and he withdrew. We encouraged him to. It wasn't for him. It's not for most 18-year-olds, right? 19-year-olds. That's not necessarily what it's not, they're not going to get out of it what they also need in addition to the learning.
Right. I think we learn best when we're most comfortable, of course. So if we're in a classroom and it's making us uncomfortable because we have family needs, or maybe we're a little self-conscious because we're older, whatever the reason is, we're not going to learn as well. So in that case, the model of an online curriculum might be better. But what are you seeing? Let's say you have two students, both are comfortable with retaining information and performance and things like that. I'm sure it's a very generic question for you, but what are the differences, both positive and negative, with online and a traditional classroom environment?
So one of the reasons that online classes are particularly popular for older students and learners is that they have the flexibility to work at their own pace. And so it could be at 9 p.m. after they've put their children to bed or they've had dinner, and there aren't classes offered at Saturday evening at 9 p.m. So part of it is flexibility. If you're going to take online classes, there is a lot of research that talks about how important it is that you are very good at self-discipline and time management. Often, again, why it's not necessarily good for 18 and 19-year-olds, because there are so many other diversions, activities, interesting things to do in college that take you away. And I would be the first to tell you, I had so much fun my first year in undergrad. Wow, I was lucky I was still academically eligible to be there the next semester. But I figured it out that if I wanted to continue to have that much fun, I did have to be academically eligible. So it's just a different, pacing, but it does require some self-discipline and time management. If you are really good at that, then an online class would serve you well. If you need the weekly accountability, if you need that teacher saying, "Where's your homework?" in person, in a voice, instead of, the 0 on the assignment, missing assignment will review grade when submitted or something like that, then online classes might not be for you.
Mm-hmm. How about from a communication perspective? Like I kind of mentioned at the beginning, that instructor to student interaction, there's a lot more things that the student can glean from a class. Maybe an instructor is more passionate, or they're incorporating something like music into the classroom or a video and these other things. Whereas an online class, sometimes you're just reading a textbook or scrolling through a PowerPoint or even listening to a lecture, but it's all very same. Like it's all very linear, I feel like. So
it is and it isn't. Part of so when I first started teaching online, I really missed being in the classroom. I really missed my students. I missed, having chats as you're walking out of class, as you're waiting for class to start. I miss getting to know them. But then I realized it's really on me to be more intentional about setting up those opportunities to connect with my students. And about that time when I had that realization, I started making one-on-one mandatory meetings with my students. They have to meet with me. Every class I teach, students have to meet with me at least twice, if not more. And I am always, as are many instructors, I'm not unique. We've come a long way in what people do in online now. It's not a correspondence course, you mail it in kind of thing anymore. I have a textbook because some people like to read. I also have videos. I have my own videos. I have little funny quizzes. I have lots of announcements every week reminding them. I work very hard to make sure my feedback is very specific to what they're doing and their project. And they know, my students know I have office hours all the time and they're posted on a regular basis, and they know they can just call me on Teams if they're sitting there doing work and they have a question, I try to get back to them pretty quickly. And I think that's one thing people, if you're going to teach an online class, the concept of work-life balance has to shift a little bit because you are intuitively accepting that students are going to do a lot of their work on the weekends. And so you need to be responsive. You can still set your boundaries, like let them know. One of the things that I do when I work with online instructors, particularly new ones, is if a student writes you, you don't have to solve the problem or answer the question right away, but you do have to let them know, I saw your email. I'll get to this when I get back at my desk at noon. So they can go, okay, they got it. I'm going to go over here and do something else. So it's about being respectful of their time as well as them being respectful of my time. And, when I get to it, I have at least told them you can expect an answer from me by this point or, more information. So I think it's just different. And when you realize it's not better or worse, or it's better or worse only depending on what the student really needs and how they learn, but the education is not lesser than because it's an online class.
Right. So it's really kind of get what you put into it, both from the professor's standpoint and the student's standpoint.
Absolutely.
I've never taken an online class, so I'm a little bit biased. When I recently went back to school, as I was telling you, and I signed up on purpose for all in-person classes because throughout my entire adult life, any kind of education I've received, I'm always asking questions. I'm always pulling the instructor aside at the end saying, hey, did I understand this right? Or can you look over this draft of my paper real quick? Like I really enjoy the interconnectedness of that relationship with my professor or instructor, whoever the master of the information is. Like I just want to pick their brain because maybe I've thought of things that aren't in the curriculum and I just want to know for me. It might not be on the test, but I respect this person and their knowledge. So I want to pull them aside and ask. So I really enjoy getting to know people too. So I think that's why I kind of geared towards in person more than online.
I mean, I miss that with my students, although if I have a student more than once, I get a little bit more of that. The other side of that coin is not everybody has the flexibility or the opportunity to go back to school in person in that format, but they still want to learn something. And so in some ways, it's expanding access to, or they live in a rural area. It's expanding access to a group of learners who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to learn things they wanted to learn.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily the same audiences. There's always going to be a need and a desire for the in-person, the experience of talking to the professor after class, picking their brain. But there's also at the same time a different learner who wants the information and wants the credential or, the learning opportunity. And so how do we make that happen? And it's also a workforce development issue because I know in our College of Nursing and for our College of Education, there are people out in Calhan or out in rural areas or in Southern Colorado who want to upskill their nursing credentials, or they want to be a para in a K-12 educational classroom, but they can't come from, south of Pueblo or Trinidad to class to get that in order to go do the job they want to do. And so online education offers more access to that kind of group that typically hasn't had as much access to it.